PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization. And what a PEO is a service business that through the construct of a co-employment relationship provides payroll tax, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, health and retirement benefits, and HR services to primarily small to medium-sized businesses. Well, when you think about what's core to a company, generally it's going to be what delivers the most value to the end user or the customer of that company. If it's a restaurant, how to make that food tasty and delivered on time. If it's a cabinet manufacturer, it's how to make sure those finishes are beautiful and aren't marred in the shipping process. When you look at the services that a PEO provides, they tend to be very internally focused and not customer focused. And they also tend to be very administrative, and we like to call that administrivia. So in terms of payroll taxes, shopping for insurance, explaining to your employees the benefit plans, explaining to them the 401k options, enrolling employees in those plans, complying with any number of government reporting obligations on health and safety, payroll taxes, that doesn't add value to the customer of that business. And those can be easily outsourced to a third-party vendor without affecting the primary revenue-generating relationships that a business has with its customers. If you went back to 1900, there were very few regulations in this country that affected businesses and how they employed their workers. As part of the great reforms, both of the reformist era, Upton Sinclair, the FDA, things like that, going through the Depression and then ultimately the Great Society programs, a number of rules and regulations that affect employment have just mushroomed. Even today, you read that the top thing in the newspaper is the government is going to deputize the business owner to make them the primary way to enforce our immigration laws. So when I had customers in this business, they would say to me, the reason I use a PEO is I want to put as much distance as possible between me and the federal and state regulatory authorities, because I don't like dealing with those folks. And if you could deal with them in a straight, upfront, professional manner and keep me out of it, then my life is a much better life. What I like to think of is that the PEOs puts a lot of distance between the small business owner and the federal and state regulators. The story I like to tell about this was that there was a plumbing business in Tallahassee. And this business owner, his hours were he wanted his employees to be there at 8 and leave at 5. But he opened the office at 7, where they can come in, have coffee, eat breakfast. Some of them had a wife that would drop them off or a spouse that would drop them off, and it was convenient for them. He terminated an employee. The employee then brings a claim with the Department of Labor that this employee should have been paid overtime for all those hours he was there from 7 o'clock before 8 o'clock because he was working a 45-hour week. He got there at 7, left at 5. The boss knew about this, and he was never paid for that time. Regardless of the merits of the argument on both sides, this small business spent over $100,000 in legal fees working his way through the Department of Labor and the regulatory process before this was resolved. And after this happened, he said, I never want to deal with those lawyers again. I never want to deal with these federal officials again. Please, I don't care what your cost, just take this burden away from me. Business owners feel by controlling all these details, they're really in control of their business. You know, if they're the ones signing the paychecks and personally handing it, that they've got an element of control. But I really think that's a misperception. They really get more control over what makes that business happen by giving up control over the small things and focusing on the big things. And if they're willing to do that and take that leap of faith that I'm not really giving up control of my business, I'm just delegating these services, and now I'm really going to be in control because I'm going to focus on my customers, that's what will make those businesses successful. When companies enter in the PEO relationship, sometimes they save hard dollars, sometimes it costs them the same, sometimes it costs them a little more, depending on what their current benefit plans were in workers' compensation. But the primary reason people outsource, and this is true not only with PEOs but with other businesses, is to avail themselves of world-class services with up-to-date technology, with access to a whole bunch of specialists on a shared service model that they could not afford on their own as a small business person. But for that small business person, if we can give them back 5 hours a week, an hour a day of their time, that's probably the most valuable resource that they can't buy from anybody else. And if we free up that time for them and give it back to them, that's what's going to make that business happen. That's what produces revenue. That's what comes up with the new product ideas. That's what visits the client or the customer on a daily basis. That's what follows up on the problems in the business. Those 5 extra hours a day. So if I could free that up, then I've done a very valuable service for these small businesses. Another benefit of PEO PEOs is risk transfer. They really are an insurance policy against making mistakes. It's very easy to make mistakes. When I was running a PEO, we used to go to the bank the day after the tax filing deadline for state taxes, and you'd see all these small business people filing a day late. Well, they're subject to fines and penalties. They were a great pool of potential clients for us. We say, if you used our services, you wouldn't be here. One, you wouldn't be spending the time waiting in line. Two, you wouldn't be late, because we have that down pat. It's regularized, it's computerized, it gets electronically wired to the government on the right day. And we'll do that for you. It's hard for people to understand the risk until they've made a mistake and they see what it could really do to their business. So if everything's running perfectly, a lot of times they're just lucky because they don't really know that they're not doing everything perfectly. And I'd like to think is that most companies that use PEOs are companies that want a better agenda. They want to comply with laws. They want to treat their employees fairly. They want to have a good workplace to motivate their employees. They want to have an array of benefit plans. They want to have a professional person speak to their employees in a professional manner about those benefit plans. And a lot of times they can't do that all themselves. And for those who want the better agenda, the PEOs deliver that agenda. PEOs can't always guarantee that they're going to lower your benefit costs, because sometimes their plans are much richer and have a better array of benefits, have better features, have more access than the small person would otherwise be able to buy on their own. But what they can do is smooth out the volatility of those costs. When you're a small group and you're buying insurance, if you have a shock loss, which is a significant claim in any given year, that can have a dramatic impact on your rate structure in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you have an employee who had a heart attack or needs hospitalization, or if you're in a blue-collar business and there was a workers' compensation accident where somebody pulled out their back or hurt their arm, those costs become embedded in that small employer for many, many, many years. By being with a much larger group, generally you're going to smooth out that volatility, and the cost increases you will get in that plan will probably be no worse than what the average American business will pay for that cost. For those insurance products within that given time period. Imagine if I could free up for them 5 hours a week, 1 hour a day. How many more customer visits could they make? How many more products can they invent? How many more employees could they interview to upgrade their team? And how much more time can they go to Johnny's baseball or soccer games? Free up their family time. Those 5 hours are probably the most valuable thing that they can